What's going on YouTube? It's Jason, and today I'm going to be speaking about my transformation. Now, I'm very proud of my transformation and how far I've come. I've been training myself for about 20 years and I've been in shape for about 17 of those. To the extent that if you haven't known me since childhood, you've always known me to be in half decent shape. But the reality is, for 3 years, I struggled with obesity. So in this video, I want to dig a little bit deeper into my battle with obesity, how I got to where I am today, and hopefully you can learn one or two things for your own journey. So when I was younger, I was always a bit of a chubby kid. I started out as a baby and I was always a little bit on the chubby side. As I grew older, I was still a bit chubby, but as you can see from the photos, it wasn't crazy, it wasn't out of control, I wasn't severely obese. So I was probably a bit more chubby than average, maybe till I was about 8 or 9. So in primary school, I was chubbier than normal, a bit of puppy fat, but nothing out of the ordinary. Between the ages of 10 and 13, when I went to secondary school, that's when things began to get really bad. I began to pile on the pounds and I became obese. Now, I've had a few adults that struggle with obesity try and make out that being obese as a child isn't as bad. But I completely disagree. Being obese back then was not as much of a thing. Yes, we knew there were obese people in America, but over here in the UK, we didn't really have a massive problem. So going to school, I was one of the few people that was obese. I was at a height where I was too short for men's clothes, but I was also too wide for kids' clothes my age. It was so awkward. So we probably shouldn't compare, but childhood obesity is definitely traumatic. Add that to the fact that you don't have a job, so you don't have your own disposable income, it's much harder to do anything about it. So how did I go from a chubbier than normal kid to a morbidly obese teenager? In short, trauma, and how I responded to that. So about 22 years ago, my parents separated and I took this really badly. I began to comfort eat and really pile on the pounds over about 3 years. At my heaviest, I was 12 stone at the age of 12. Now that might not sound like a lot, but when all of your friends are between 8 and 9 stone, it was a lot. For those of you that don't know stones, we're talking 76 kilos or just over 165 pounds. Like, I literally weighed the same as a fully grown man. It was crazy. Now initially, I blamed the weight gain on the fact that I loved food, and it was always explained away that I was a growing child. But I started to notice a dangerous pattern emerging. And this pattern was when I craved and when I binged. Now this 3-year period was tough, and there were a lot of peaks and troughs, high days and low days. But I noticed that on my low days, I would tend to binge the most. We're talking like half a loaf of bread with peanut butter or whole packets of biscuits. And all of this was outside mealtimes. I was completely out of control. Knowing what I know now, I must have been consuming north of 3,000 calories. And it's really strange. I became aware of emotional eating before I knew it as a formal concept. When I'd binge, it would feel so satisfying and soothing that I would end up eating more and more. It was very comforting. And I wouldn't know why certain foods tasted much better when I was down, but now I do. I explain this to my clients. The hardest thing about emotional eating is that if you're not aware of it, it can feel like you're a car skidding on ice. You are literally out of control, going wherever your emotions take you. So I got to 12 stone and I realized enough was enough and something needed to change. So I started lifting weights with my best mate. My best mate Kofi, we train every Friday in his garage, and I even bought my own weight set from Argos so I could train at home. Now he was into football, very lean at the time, so I thought he must know what he's doing, so I followed him. So I was trying to do something about it, but I didn't yet understand the importance of cardio and nutrition. So I was more than happy lifting weights and I was gaining muscle and getting stronger, but I wasn't really getting leaner. Then after many failed attempts, I started dieting. But at the time, similar to how it is now, everything was Slim Fast and Atkins. Nobody was teaching sustainable fat loss. It was all about getting it off as fast as possible, any which way you did it. And so secretly, I was trying to cut out all junk food, cut out all sweets. I tried Atkins, I tried Slim Fast, but none of it worked. So what changed and how did I get to where I am now? Well, the first thing, although I couldn't conceptualize it, is that I became aware of emotional eating. I would be hyper aware of the days when I was down or felt low, and I would try not to use food as a pick-me-up. Because I was aware of emotional eating, I started being more vulnerable with friends about how I was feeling. I found in sharing my problems, the load felt lighter and I was less likely to emotional eat. And the second thing, and probably the most significant factor in my journey, was meeting my uncle. I met my uncle back in 2005. I just started another diet, so I'd lost a little bit of weight before I met him. But this guy was in his late 50s, he was in fantastic shape, and he didn't believe in dieting. For him, it was a lifestyle. He'd been training over 30 years and he was in fantastic shape. Being in shape wasn't about the beach or about what anyone else thought of him. It was a lifestyle and just what he believed in. And to that point in my life, I had never ever met anyone who wasn't losing weight for an aesthetic purpose. Everything around me was lose weight, feel great, get ripped for summer. And this guy was speaking a different language. So that holistic view of fitness really left a mark on me, and I came back to the UK inspired. So that kind of had a knock-on effect on the third point I'm about to say, but training changed my life. So I came back from America, having met my uncle, and I was motivated to now make this a lifestyle. I stopped the diet, I stopped setting aggressive goals about how fast I could lose fat, and just committed to the process of eating better and training more. And again, at that age, I couldn't articulate it, but I felt the benefits of mood, mental focus, my energy levels were better, I felt amazing. And with that, my body really began to transform. I was getting leaner and stronger and fitter. My body was literally changing month on month. So now let's get into some photos. So I started training in 2003. I spent the first 2 years kind of going up and down the scale, yo-yoing really and trying various diets. 2005 I met my uncle, and this photo, although you can't see it from the jacket, but I'd actually lost 3.5 stone that year. No dieting whatsoever, just organic fat loss, good portion control, and living an active lifestyle. As I was in school and I had a bit more time, I was doing 20 to 30 minutes of skipping per day and doing 3 weight sessions per week from home. So it's a really weird thing, but once I'd lost all the weight, because I was used to being a bigger guy generally, I realized I needed to put on some muscle. None of my clothes fitted me and I just felt really skinny. So I went on a solid bulk. I was literally eating everything and anything in a bid to gain muscle. I was probably bulking solidly for about 4 years, from 2006 to 2010. And I think this is very important. At that stage, I was a beginner, my body was hyper responsive to weight training, so it didn't really make sense to be trying to cut or stay lean. Genuinely, this is probably the leanest place I got to between 2007 and 2012. When I say I was bulking, I literally mean I spent most of that time in a caloric surplus. So yeah, I don't want to make any bones about it. It was a strong bulk. I was having bolognese some days for breakfast, some days rice and chicken. I really went in. So me and my mates were all into the gym at that time, and social media was just about popping off. This was around 2012, and my mates decided to do a photo shoot, and so I leaned down for the shoot. This is the leanest I'd been up until that point. So you can see here full row of abs, decent muscle bellies. So at this point I'd been lifting weights for around 9 years, but properly with like training and knowledge about nutrition, maybe about 5 years. And the gains continued. So I finished this photo shoot, I went straight back into a bulk. Again, I wasn't playing around, consuming those calories, lifting heavy, resting well. I spent the next 3 to 4 years mainly bulking and only really leaning down in the summer, trying to gain as much muscle as possible. One of the things I'd noticed after about 8 years of training was that the gains were really slowing down. I'm talking about I would train the whole year and I was gaining like 2 or 3 pounds of muscle, and I started to read more about my genetic limits. I realized that I could gain weight very quickly, i.e. body fat, but in terms of lean muscle tissue, the gains after this point became painfully slow. And it was tough, I'm not gonna lie, it was really difficult. Having gained weight really rapidly my first 3 years, I kind of had this idea that I will continue doing that for the rest of my life, but little did I know that your body has a genetic limit. So even though I've been training 2 decades, I'd say most of my muscle growth happened in the first decade. In the last 10 years, the gains haven't been huge, but what I'm seeing more is muscle maturity. The shape of my actual muscles have improved, but in terms of actual size, I haven't gained too much size in the past 10 years. And truth be told, that is just the reality of a natural trainer. You can't continue to gain muscle forever. So now the good part. After a rocky start, I've been in shape now for about 17 years, and I'd attribute this down to my approach. And this is really important. My goal when I started was never just to look good. What I wanted was fitness to be a lifestyle, and I knew the body would come as a byproduct of that. It's a very different focus. These days, in the before and after social media culture, people don't ask any questions about the journey. They just want to look a certain way. I've had clients literally email me, look at one of the transformations on my website and just say, get me that body at all costs. It's just outrageous. You don't know what they had to go through to get there. So my philosophy is very different. The 4 key components I focus on are mindset, so how you think and how you see yourself, your environment, particularly at home, what's in your cupboards, and then habits and behaviors. If you can leverage these 4 things, you will be able to get in shape and stay in shape. I'll cover those 4 components in a bit more depth in another video. So that's the journey. 2 decades of training, the first 3 years struggling with obesity, lost all the weight, and I've never looked back since. Hopefully you've learned from my mistakes and have drawn some inspiration for your own journey. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, let me know your thoughts, please subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.